Welcome to the September 22nd meeting of the Environmental Management Commission. And get rid of this. I'd like to welcome to a fairly full agenda and start us off with a roll call, verify that we've got our quorum, and I'll go through by district, and those of you who are online, wave so people can see who you are. District 1 is John Burns, and he will not be able to make us unless he found a really last minute substitute for a class he has to teach. District 2 is Elise Robinson. See, she's here.
I'm here, thanks.
Carrie PE is not able to make it. She is helping to serve our community today and isn't able to make it. District 4 is John Olson, and he is on the phone via Melissa Cardwell. John, you want to say hi?
Here.
District 5 is Melissa Cardwell, happens to be in Oregon. So thank you, technology. We're able to meet no matter where we are. District 6 is Lee McIntosh. I saw you, there you are. And then District 7 is Dee Fulton and her dog. And District 8 is Rick Gaffney. And District 9 is me, Georgine Adams, the chair. So welcome all, and thank you for joining us. Our first order of business is the approval of our minutes from our August 25th meeting. Can I have a motion?
This is Commissioner Robinson. Make a motion to approve the minutes.
And a second?
Second.
John, I think seconded it. Thank you.
Yeah, John seconded.
Are there any corrections or discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I will move to take a vote. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right. Sounds like any non-approvals? No, okay, minutes are accepted. Thank you very much. The next item is statement from the chair, and I thought I would read our charter just in case you've forgotten. The Environmental Management Commission shall advise the Department of Solid Waste and Wastewater Programs, waste reduction, strategies, recycling, litter control, community involvement, and other issues, including any pilot project or program related to the functions of the department, where the department is the Department of Environmental Management. The commission shall also provide its comments and recommendations on these matters to the council. The commission shall hear and determine appeals from decisions of the director, including orders and denials of variances, unquote. The EMC is also given 45 days to comment on council bills that relate to the functions and duties of the DEM. And to keep us on track for following our charter and the procedural rules that apply to us, we have a new corporate counsel assigned to EMC, and that is Sinclair Salas Ferguson. I'm gonna wave, say something, Salas Ferguson.
I'll just say hello.
Aloha, welcome.
And look forward to working with you all.
Thank you. Our next agenda item are statements from the public. To my knowledge, we have Jerome Warren, Sandra Demerel, and I saw Roy Cadota from Mr. K's. Is there anyone else with you, Roy, that will be speaking?
This is Rick Bennett. I'll be speaking to an agenda item that Mr. Gaffney has introduced.
Okay. So we'll wait for you to join Rick when we get to that agenda item, I assume. And that is item 7B. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to give testimony today? Seeing none, we'll go back to Jerome Warren. What items do you want to speak on, and when would you like to speak, now or when we get to the item?
I'm Jerome Warren. I'd like to testify now. I'm in Na'alehu. I'd like to testify on item 7C, the Na'alehu sewer. You have my written testimony. It was sent to Honolulu because the attorney who took me to court wants to be a judge. I submitted to you a similar letter last month and it was blocked. OIP is looking into this. You should have their correspondence. This year, the Department of Environmental Management is more feeble. The staff cannot produce monthly reports prior to commission meetings. This negligence inhibits the public's ability to add corrective testimony. We cannot correct what we do not know. This makes the environmentalists among you seem both feeble and draconian. People do not follow feeble leaders. I do not like being oppressed by the green thumb. Nobody knows what the updates for the Na'alehu sewer project are, but I assume that you are still going for the impossible plan while keeping homeowners in the dark. A legislative audit will reveal how much money has gone to outside contractors for the Na'alehu plans and reports. The dollar figure for Na'alehu will be astronomical, while the citizens' morale will be negative. Morale is part of an audit. Anyhow, you'll find a negative value there, thanks to you guys, yeah?
Mr. Warren,
neither
Mr. Warren, Mr.
nor the
Warren,
public's trust
Mr.
in
Warren,
government
Mr.
be
Warren,
regained.
Mr. Warren.
We are left with less than nothing, and precious time keeps getting dithered away. I don't know who's trying to interrupt me, but this is just
Mr.
got
Warren,
to
this
stop.
is Mr. Warren. Can you stop talking for one quick second? This is Deputy Corporation Counsel Sinclair Saws Ferguson. Please do not direct any personal comments towards the commissioners. Keep your statements to the agenda item. Thank you.
Oh, sir, I followed what the county council does. I know the law, and you cannot interrupt me. You cannot correct me. This is another OIP violation. I have free speech rights, so thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Warren. Next up, Sandra Demerol. Did you want to speak now or when we get to the item you're interested in?
Well, it seems like the Pahala and Na'alehu LCCs are way down the agenda and probably won't be reached today. So I would like to comment now. Thank you very much. This is Sandra Demerol testifying from Na'alehu. Thank you again for allowing us to do this through the phone. I'm very concerned about the notice of noncompliance that was received was sent to the, Mayor Mitch Roth on August 18th from the EPA. The noncompliance is for the Pahala Community Large Capacity Cesspools Closure Project. Since you have not been privy to this, I would like to read to you the important section. It says, on July 23rd, 2021, the county, I'm quoting from the notice. On July 23rd, 2021, the county submitted a design package that included wastewater treatment design build documents and a letter detailing the county's desire to construct a wastewater treatment plant that uses a mechanical secondary treatment process. Based on review of the information presented in the county's design package, EPA has determined that the county has failed to fully comply with the requirements of paragraph F of the AOC because the county's design plans have not been approved for construction by Hawaii Department of Health. The county's failure to comply with all applicable requirements of paragraph F is a violation of the AOC. Pursuant to subsection E of the AOC, EPA may, at its discretion, assess stipulated penalties for an unexcused delay in complying with any provision of the AOC. EPA may also elect to pursue judicial remedies to enforce the AOC. According to the AOC, in section E 43A, they start with $150 per day per violation for the 1st through the 30th day. That moves to $300 per day violation for the 1st through the 60th day. And now here we are at 60 plus days at $500 per day. So that now the county is on the hook for $15,000 a month while receiving only $2,442 at most from those who are currently on the Pahala LCC. So then the payments that they're receiving from Pahala are not even going to cover this $15,000 a month that we're on the hook for. The county agreed to pay these stipulated penalties if they did not do the actions that were in the AOC. I'm very concerned as a taxpayer and as a citizen in this county that in fact we are now on the hook for an unknown amount of penalties, stipulated penalties. Plus we're on the hook for perhaps further judicial actions. So therefore, I'm asking, please commissioners, find out how much this is going to cost us, because this is a running taxi meter basically. And the county agreed to pay this if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And now they've been sent this letter demanding that, notifying them that they can in fact be demanding payment at any moment. So I would hope that the commissioners would be interested in how much this is going to cost us. So thank you very much.
I'm muting myself because they're doing construction around me here. So I'm sorry for the lag there. I'm going to try very hard to make sure that we have the opportunity for Director Mansour to talk about the status of Nahalehu item 7C that the speakers are talking about. And hopefully he will be able to address some of the questions you've raised. Next on the agenda is Mr. Kays. And if you could say who's there. Are you there, Roy? Oh, there you are. And the item that you want to, or items that you would like to talk to.
Well, sorry, we got in late, so I mean, we're kind of kind of flustered at this point. Can we come in later? Is that something?
You can. You can, when we get to the item. So you wanted to talk about items 5B1A and.
Well, I know we wanted to talk about glass and solar panels and
non-Wi-Fi glass and e-waste.
Okay, so we will proceed with the agenda, and when those items come up, we'll ask for your public testimony, okay?
yeah, I'm sorry. We just kind of got up. Kind of.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
And then Rick Bennett will be also talking later in the agenda when Rick Gaffney presents his proposal. So if there are no more public testifiers, move on to our next item, which is unfinished business. The first item is the opportunity for the commissioners to report on any interesting progress they've made on the priorities that they are working. I'll start us off with, I have joined with Senna Berg at the DEM Recycling Group to work on the life cycle assessment project, which is now underway. And we, at least I participated in me talking about scoping and whatnot. And so if not next meeting, November's meeting, we'll get an update on that LCA project, which is going on. Anybody else have some activity? Rick is going to be talking about what he's doing. We've incorporated into the agenda. Anybody else? Raise your hand. Nope, I'm not seeing anybody else. Just let me know if there's something you want to bring up and share with the group. And John Burns as well, I incorporated his comments on activities that he was working on. And since he's not here, I'll have to try to address them myself. So I'll move on to the item 5B. Continuing probably the never-ending continuation of the discussion of how in the world to get enough funding for solid waste division. We'll be hearing more from Ramsey, and I don't know if Brenda's there as well, about their meeting yesterday with the council committee, talking about funding and solid waste issues. But for now, what I wanted to do was to go back and look at, are we ready yet to make some specific recommendations around extended producer responsibility? Are there priority programs we would want to encourage EMC, or rather DEM and the council? And because most of the EPR work is going to need to be done at the state level, it's rolling it up to those who can make the programs in place. But the first one is just kind of, studying and laying out, what do we want to see on an EPR program? And the first item, which maybe has come too soon for Mr. Cadota, is a recommendation from John Burns that we push for an increase in the fee for non-high five glass, and to make sure the county gets the appropriate allocation of funds. That's a frustration, although my understanding, Senna, are you there? I think they're close to being able to cover the
Yes.
costs. No, maybe
Sorry.
you could comment on whether or not for the non-high five glass collection and recycling, whether that advanced deposit fee that's paid by those who ship glass to the county are covering the costs that you have.
No,
Okay, and
it probably covers 50 to 60%,
okay,
maybe a little bit more, but it does not cover it. So
so if you had your druthers, it would be like doubling the current fee.
yes, I mean, just keeping up, as I keep telling anyone that wants to hear it, 27 years is a long time to not increase anything. So.
And I think that Mr. Kays has a comment that is pertinent to this discussion. Are you ready now, Roy, to talk?
Yeah, okay, put my picture back on.
Yes.
Okay, here, this is a story. We also collect non-hi-fi glass at our site. So because of the bars and the patrons who come in, they for some reason just want to drop it off, and we kind of tell them to go to the transfer stations, but they get irate, and so they probably just throw it away if we tell them that, because it takes a while to get to the transfer, and unless they're doing trash recycling there, then they tend to bring it here, because we are a pretty big recycling facility for the high five. So I mean, we attract a lot of customers because of what we sort and stuff like that. So this, and we kind of environmentally conscious, so we take in cardboard and whatever they drop off, but we tend to try to tell them to get to the county's transfer stations, but they kind of want to do it here, so we do the cardboard. But getting back to the glass, I mean, we take in about how much?
$1,600 a year.
$1,600 a year in glass. It doesn't sound that much, but it's non-hi-fi glass, so it can't pile up. So what we're trying to say is we're trying to get some of that monies that the county is giving out to say whoever has the transfer stations contract. But we always saying is can it be extended to other facilities, or like my recycle center, because we do collect, and it's hard for the customers to always go to the transfer stations is one. And so that is with the glass. And we're also thinking that maybe we should be putting this glass, I mean, I know it's not part of the subject, but into the landfill as fill, or roads, which we're trying to do, or try to do some colored glass for decoration or whatever. But I have my predecessor here. She can say
I'm
something.
Michelle McSwear. I consult with Mr. Case, and basically what we're saying is, one, we would like a collection site to be able to either dispose of the non-high-five glass with the official non-high-five collector, rather than be treated as a commercial site, because it's not our glass, it's glass that the community brings to us. As Roy said, having to dispose of the non-high-five glass ourselves is back of the envelope was about $1,600 cost, which is a lot because, as you know, recycling is volume and the profit margin is very small. So in addition to what Sane just said about the cost, that number does not represent all of the glass. And we're not even asking for glass. People are just bringing it, and we tell them not to bring it, but they still do. So if we were to actually collect intentionally, we could get even more. I think that recycling is best when it's a habit. And so if people just habitually come to our site to drop off everything at once, that could help to collect more glass. So our request is, one, yes, to increase the amount, as Sane said, there's more glass out there. Two, to allow the Mr. K's as a collection site to be treated as a resident, to be able to drop off the glass with the official collector, or if we as a collection site, a private collection site, could be able to submit for non-high-five glass reimbursement. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And personal response to that sounds reasonable. And I think maybe it's something that we could work offline with the department on looking at ways to minimize your cost. It is a community service that you're providing. And I'd be interested in anybody else's comment from the commissioners.
Georgine?
Dee Fulton?
Yeah, D here, District 7. My suggestion is that I would ask you to solicit volunteers from our commissioners and get a small group together to work with Mr. K's. I agree with you that it's what they are asking is very reasonable. I'm not sure of the actions to move forward, but that's what I would like to see happen, is a few commissioners work on that. And regrettably, I'm not one volunteering.
Appreciate that. Comments from any other commissioners?
Yeah, Rick Gaffney, District 8. I wonder if we can move this forward more quickly. Personally, I don't think it needs much evaluation. I think it's kind of a no-brainer. I wonder if it would be appropriate to just make a motion at this point that we ask that the county consider reimbursing Mr. K's for the collection of non-high-five glass.
We have a second for a motion?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And would also initiate discussion. It's always easy to go to the county and say, we want you to pay for something. But I think it goes hand in hand with a mechanism for funding it.
True. It occurs to me that perhaps one route is the residential hauling fee credit. I forget the official words for that. When haulers are taking residential waste, which was a previous controversy a few meetings ago, if they could be treated in that way, because again, what they're dealing with is residential waste, essentially. And I, for one, would be willing to be in the conversations to see what kind of accommodations could be made. And so Dee, what I hear you asking is maybe a revision of the motion, not putting the solution into that the county pays Mr. K, but rather that the county works out a way to reduce the costs Mr. K is facing by winding up with all this glass that could be recycled.
I think this circles back to agenda item 5B1, which is that extended producer responsibility.
Right. Which is the automatic or advanced deposit fee, and pay more money. And it'd have to be more than twice as much because it already cost the county twice as much as they're getting. So now we're talking of an even higher volume to amount to cover additional cost. And I guess I go back to Rick's comment that we're probably not, this meeting isn't the place to figure out what the best solution is. But
Yeah, I'm hearing that now too. So I would retract the motion and argue that we should continue discussion. There may be other people like Mr. K's that should also be considered in this motion. So let's be sure that we're being broad and not just focused on a single business, although we appreciate the work that he does.
okay, Melissa Cardwell.
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to what Rick said. What comes to mind is Atlas Recycling. They might be a good organization to reach out to because they do a lot of recycling as well. And I imagine that they're encountering a similar situation as Mr. K's. But I like Dee's idea of maybe, a few of us working on it. I guess I'm a little bit unclear. About the non-high five, how the non-high five works. I know how the high five program works, but I don't have enough knowledge about the non-high five glass.
Where am I?
Roy Cadota, looks like Roy Cadota wants to say something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, just an individual businesses. Yeah, we need to get farther than that. But what happens to this non-hi-fi glass? I know it stays, I mean, the majority of the non-hi-fi is done by business service. And so it stays on island, but what do they really do with it? Are they, I know they quote their terrain with it, but what actually is happened to this glass? Because we can do other things with this glass, like cover and I don't know if I'm speaking out of turn, but I just don't understand. You guys want to raise the rates, but where is that glass going is what I'm saying.
I think Senna Barrett can answer that question. Senna?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I was going to pipe up anyway because the challenge, our grant money is tied into not just collection, it has to be recycled. So before we pay out on our invoices for the hauling of the glass, we are provided proof of that it's being reused. Primarily, it's been used for landscaping, construction backfill, like ditches and stuff like that. So usually once a month or every other month, sometimes they do it in different batches, we're provided with basically like payment application and reporting with photos and who is, what resident is that's collecting the glass or getting the glass hauled to them. And then we provide that information back to DOH before we get any money from them. Every quarter we do grant reports. So if you collect it, then there has to be proof. In order to get money, there would be need to show proof of that it's being recycled. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
And I know Business Services Hawaii used to crush all that glass, like what Roy was talking about. They used to do that and provide it, I think, for free, if I remember correctly. Like any resident could pick it up and use it, you know, for landscaping and whatnot. But I think that ended a number of years ago. So I have a quick question, maybe, yeah, for you, Senna. So like with high five, you know, the consumer makes that, you know, pays that additional nickel when they purchase that item. But with non-high five, that doesn't happen. So where does the money come from for the non-high five glass? Is that a grant like what you're saying? And where does that grant money come from?
When let me get this right, when the wholesaler pays, when they bring in, say, a pallet of tomato sauce or something, or then they pay 1.5 pennies per container. And then that goes to DOH. And then we are given, they tell us how much we qualify for, the grant amount, and then every quarter we apply for it back.
So it is an EPR program of sorts that
Yep.
the shipper, basically the exporter to the island, is having to pay a fee that goes to paying for recycling.
And the Business Services is still processing glass at out there in Cal at their facility.
So in the spirit of time, unless there's some other comments, why don't we? Oh, we got comments.
Question for Jean. Sorry. One last question for Roy. Go
ahead.
I'll be 2 seconds. What else is the community trying to dispose of at your location besides glass and e-waste?
Well, we do, and see that's the irony of this, because you know, we do also cardboard. They drop off cardboard because the you know, I mean, everybody brings it in boxes or whatever, so they want to recycle it, and we tell them that the county has a dump site, you know, I mean, a recycling bin at the transfer, but they still do it here. I mean, we don't tell them, you know, because of 2 to 3 boxes or 10 boxes, we kind of like to help them out, because for them to go through the dump is a hassle. And so we take a little bit of, and we ourselves recycle our own. There's a county bin for commercial, but I'm a recycler, so I recycle my own recycling. You know what I'm saying? But the thing with the glass is I also do the non-high glass, and I recycle my own non-high glass, high five glass. One container of maybe 45,000 pounds, we get $200 from our recyclers, and it takes us about $5,000 to get it to the West Coast. This is with high five, don't get me wrong.
She asked, what other things do you recycle?
Right.
In addition to e-waste and glass?
We do take in PET, non-high-fi PET bottles, as well as HDPE. Whatever they drop off, you know, they just drop it, so we kind of take it. I'm not going to put it in the dumpster. I should, because the county's telling me to put it in the dumpster. But we, as a recycler, we recycle it with our other high five. You know, we have people in LA that we can ship our non-high five plastic to.
We also do scrap metal, such as aluminum, brass, copper, lead. We do tire rims and
we do batteries, catalytic converters, batteries.
We do newspaper, which we just started. We tried to do office paper, but there's no buyers.
We do recycling of we shred newspaper. We sell it to the growers. So that's our new Avenue.
Yeah, and
And-
newspapers much in demand, and we've just started the PV solar panels.
Yeah, we're trying to get these PV solar panels on board because it's about that time that they come back. So we're trying to get that part of the infrastructure where we're trying to get the county to ban the solar
You don't have to
cells.
go- you don't have to
Yes,
go to
okay.
detail.
I'm sorry.
And we've just started a pilot project to look at single-use alkaline batteries because we get a lot of those through the things that we collect. And there hasn't been any way to dispose of them except in the landfill as a commercial or not for us, I mean, but for our customers. So we're just, I think Roy has a big heart for it. And it's just trying to make the business of it work and managing all the moving parts, including the recycling market in general.
We're trying to get back our if you guys could help us with the diversion fund again, that would be great. With the diversion, meaning diverting cardboard, newspaper, which you guys are doing at the transfer. But now that the United States is getting bored on this non-hi-fi plastic, which is HDPE, natural and clear, natural and colored. I mean, HDPE colored, natural is at 80 cents per pound. So the cost of recycling is there now. So, and that's why I try to get to tell the county that, there is, it is viable now, or it's getting to be viable. So we need to move in that direction where we start diverting these recyclable items again. You know what I'm saying? Because the price is there. I get 26 cents for the colored HDPE and 80 cents for the clear plastic, which is the milk cartons, which are non-hi-fi. So that's pretty good. 80 cents.
I think I'm going to interrupt you, Roy. I think we're going to put on a future agenda how we can expand back and maybe even do more recycling that we used to, and how to deal with the fact that the markets are changing faster than county rules can change. So how do we cope with that? But I think we'll put that off for a future agenda. We'll invite you back to make comment. Lee McIntosh, you had a question?
Actually, I just had a comment. I was going to say for the glass, it sounded like the simplest solution and inexpensive would be just to allow them to be able to drop it off just as everyone else does. Because even if you increase the amount that the county or the state gets, it's not really going to solve Mr. K's problem because they don't get funds from that. So that's
certainly another option, and it's one that was recommended in the integrated solid waste management plan to allow small businesses to use the transfer stations. And I think Mr. K's would still qualify as a small business. So thank you for that, Lee. Any other comments, or I think we'll follow up the discussion, maybe have some offline with Mr. K's and the county. And I'd be happy to do that. If anybody else wants to throw in their 2 cents, let me know. Moving, and this is where I don't have a lot of information. This was John Burns' idea, was as part of an extended producer responsibility to require a fee for oil recycling at the quart scale. Right now, I think it's at the 55-gallon drum sale or a gallon. Not sure where that cut is. So there is already a system in place for larger scale oil recycling, those who manufacture and sell oil, but not at the consumer quart level. Senna, did you have any input on that topic? She was going to be running in and out. So
I just sat down again. About the oil.
Right. It was on George Hidusco's wish list.
Yes, and I'm actually, apparently there used to be, I don't know if it was a barrel tax or some sort of fee that we did get years ago. And I've been trying to look into what that was. And I don't know if it's sunsetted, but apparently we used to get it, or all the counties got a small fraction of, tiny fraction to help fund this do-it-yourself oil recycling program. So, so yes, we're definitely interested in that because, again, we run out of money, you know, and people are really great at. We try to have them do it at the drop-off recycling. I mean, at the drop-off locations around the island, because then the other option is that they bring it to our household hazardous waste collection events, which ends up making it more expensive to recycle the oil. So once I find the original legislation or whatever it was, and it's from way back, then I'll send it to you, Georgie, and let you know.
Okay, we'll get follow-up then, more information behind it. And included on our potential list. Okay, moving on to e-waste. It's a huge topic area. Lots of logistics to be involved. There is an existing law. Don't ask me the name. I didn't write it down. It has this huge long acronym to it for TVs and electronics. And there is again, kind of an advanced deposit fund fee that is paid to the state and then gets rolled down to each county. But that fee is another one that was set years and years ago at $5,000, whether it's Apple or Sony or some little oddball brand that might come in. So it has no relationship to the actual volumes that are being shipped to the state. So it's an old rule. It needs to be looked at. There is some work being done on Oahu, but neighbor islands, forget it. There really isn't any kind of involvement of the manufacturers in a take-back program. And so some of the ideas that for looking at how to improve e-waste, EPR would be to increase that fee, maybe tie it better to the actual volume of products that are being shipped here, to make sure that we get the money. This was, again, one of those things where the governor, we'll blame it on COVID, needed money and went everywhere that there was any money sitting around and basically reduced the amount of funds from $225,000 to the county down to $85,000 this year, which in no way covers the costs of collection and recycling where possible of e-waste. So it would be a legal change to a state law. And so nothing simple, of course. But I know there's an individual at DEM, Chris Chin Chance, who has all sorts of great ideas, but he just got back from vacation. So I didn't slot him in to give any kind of presentation, but I wanted to just start thinking and maybe find out if any of you are aware of other groups. I think there is probably legislators who are looking at changing the current laws. So it's another place to leverage the concept of EPR to help defray costs. And this is, again, a place that Roy Cadota wanted to comment because they are a key location for collection of e-waste. So Roy, do you want to talk about e-waste now?
On the e-waste?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, as usual, not prepared, but anyway, we'll get through this. For one thing, we would like the state to tell the OEMs or manufacturers that maybe they have to have or set up a different type of tier. Not everybody pay $5,000 because the low end they pay $5,000, but Sony pays $5,000 also. Sony, Vizio, and that's a joke. I mean, they should be paying maybe, I wouldn't say 5 million, maybe 500,000, maybe. And what we're asking the state is not much, and they were going to give us 260, which they took back, and we only have 80. And they lowered the amount of time we have to pick up their e-waste on the Big Island, and it was cut in half. So obviously the rate is in half, if not 1/3. So what we're trying to say to the state is they need to have legislation where they have the OEMs be a little bit more responsible in terms of the cost of recycling. They do help us, but the funding maybe should be a little more. And we have to hurry because it's all legislation, and it goes through your county, then it goes through, so we gotta kind of hurry on this, like everything else. I understand that it takes time as well. You can do it.
All right, yes.
Michelle is a
I
little
think
better speaker.
one-
so go ahead.
Oh, we're together. So one thing is that it's a dynamic ecosystem with the producers as well as the state, the county, ourselves, retailers. And so it's a multi-party thing. And different parties have different perspectives on this law. Like, can I mention the end recycling? So the producers put an amount into the fund, which goes to the state, to the county, and then we receive that allocation. And the county right now is reimbursing only for the residential. And some of the producers together receive the recycling at the back end, and then they recycle it through an association of what they call OEM, original
Equipment manufacturers.
equipment manufacturers, the OEMs. So they're willing to cover the cost of shipping and recycling. So then we pass it on to them. Because they are connected to the original equipment manufacturers, they're saying, we basically are reimbursing Hawaii handling through that $5,000 we're putting into that fund. Therefore, we don't want to cover any other costs. So if the county doesn't use that funding to cover, for example, non-residential e-waste handling on island, they don't want to pick up the recycling for that. Because they're saying, we already paid for it, why should we pay twice? And so if what the county doesn't cover, Mr. Case has to find additional funding for, which is essentially asking the commercial to pay for it. So it's coming from the island. So basically, these different restrictions create a different dynamic around how the producers are seeing what they're paying into the fund at the front end and what they're willing to cover at the back end. They're kind of saying, we're willing to cover at the back end only what you use the money we put in at the beginning, at the front end, to cover for your island costs. So that's how they're seeing that fund. So one thing is, we would like to take a look at that law with all the parties involved and say, how do we understand this law? And how can we come up with an updated interpretation? Because as we said at the beginning, this law is quite old and everything has changed so much. Second, we are anticipating even more e-waste because we're all dependent on devices now. So how can we plan for the future with more e-waste? Third, with the lack of parts, supply chain issues, recycling, reusing is even more important. For Mr. Case, we do try to refurbish things that are reusable and selling it at a very low cost back on island, because a lot of it is still good. It's just, 5 years old, it's not the latest. So the more that we can refurbish and keep on island, it's even better. But that in itself has costs because of security and data erasure and other things. So definitely we would like to increase what's paid at the front end. We would like the state to somehow allocate it more fairly to the county. We would like to look at the entire law with different parties, which I understand would be very complex. We would like to look at the whole system, whatever works out. And I think to really plan that e-waste is going to expand along with data security issues, which adds to cost.
I thank you for your comments. We're going to need to move along. What I would like to suggest is that we get some volunteers to look at how we take some next steps, evaluating what the opportunities are, who all we need to get involved in a discussion, and what role EMC should play. If any of you are aware of existing groups who are working on e-waste, let us know, and maybe we can gin up something for next meeting. Like I said, I know that Chris Chinchance has a lot of good ideas on what he'd like to see from the DEM side. And there are many parties who care about it. So if you know something right now, to tell me or send me a line, and we'll see what we can arrange for further discussion. But we got lots of things on our agenda, so maybe we should move on. Anybody else have burning comment to make? Seeing none. I'm going to skip then. What?
And Commissioner McIntosh.
Okay.
It sounds to me, rather than just throwing more money at the problem and raising these rates, it sounds like most of the state's EPR projects, they need to be revamped and looked at. So just looking at the agenda in general, it was mostly raising rates, and I wouldn't support most of those until we can actually look at the problems associated with them and reevaluate the programs themselves.
Okay. So I'm going to defer any further comment on paint care. I think it's moving along. We heard last meeting about EPR, and I think we're supportive of the idea of moving forward with a study, because nothing's simple when we're dealing with an island. And if you've got some other ideas that we can set up for next month's agenda, let me know. The item 2 is on transfer stations and how we can look at reducing cost. I'm going to recommend we skip or combine that topic with the new business, which isn't really new business. Everything seems to be continuing, of DEM presenting what they did yesterday to the Regenerative Agricultural Waste Environmental Energy, I don't know, it's got a huge name, Tim Richards Council Committee, where they had a presentation. So we'll take number 2 and kind of roll it into what they discussed there. Number 3 is the life cycle assessment. And John Burns was recommending that we eventually look at all of our waste and how we're managing it from a life cycle standpoint. As I said, the DEM is starting the contract on a set of recyclables, and the results we get out of that study will inform future efforts, and maybe we can expand it. So if I can, I'd like to move us to the item on discussion, recommendations, and response to the presentation regarding solid waste to the council's Hawaiian committee yesterday. And that recording will eventually get up online. And we also had in a reference folder the slides that were presented. But I'm now going to turn it over to Ramsey and his crew to talk about an fascinating meeting that happened yesterday. And like to first thank you for being here. Assuming you are there and it's not just your name up on the screen. There you are. Thank you, Ramsey. You want to consolidate everything that you talked about?
Yeah, for the people that have seen the video yesterday, it is lengthy meeting. I hope that every one of you get the chance to see the video. I know we had technical difficulties yesterday. There could not do live stream lining with the public, but they recorded the meeting. So the meeting was triggered really to address some of our challenges, solutions, and priorities that DEM was working on. I think part of it was triggered because we have modified some of the transfer station days instead of 7 days, 4 days due to what's going on with the Delta variant and countywide. A lot of people don't understand our department is intertwined with so many other departments just to provide the service. We're not standalone department. Our equipment needs to be maintained. It goes to some other department to maintain it. That maintains the entire county's equipment. So it's, if one thing goes down, you have that domino effect that takes place and delays happen. So definitely the meeting was about our priorities. As you guys all know, the public health and safety and our employees' safety is #1 priority that we have. The other second priority, which is the environmental protection and meeting regulatory compliance and policies and procedures, state, federal, and local laws. The third priority, which is fiscal responsibility, and try to deliver affordable services. These are the major core of our existence as an environmental department. And we need to deliver them. And the only way to deliver is to be able to identify the challenges so we could knock them down and figure a way that we could deliver the services that you all want. And definitely the challenges, the COVID-19, it's moving in too many different directions. Last year, COVID is not today's COVID. Today's COVID is being mandated by the state. You have to have vaccination. You cannot go to state or county buildings. You cannot come to work unless you provide testing, et cetera, et cetera. We didn't have that last year. So things are changing, and having that impacts our services. The other one is definitely the funding, as you have hit on it multiple times. The funding will continue to be a challenge. We presented the cost for a transfer station. We have 22 transfer station. Cost goes up the board, it goes up and down. It depends on the location and the services that it's been provided at each transfer station. It's very detailed Excel sheet, but it definitely our accounting people been working on it since I started back and requesting that information way back in January, February. So finally, they were able to get me at least spreadsheet accumulates all the expenses and the lead to the cost per ton per transfer station. Definitely, we have the highest ton was like $470 some for transfer station for Muladi transfer station. And others, it varies from 177 to probably 60 some dollars a ton. Definitely our attention needs to be paid for the one that have the high cost, which is, $100 and over considered very high to provide a service for tonnage. So we need to start, I know I had asked your committee when I first started, is definitely we need you guys to look at the enterprise fund versus the, you know, the assessment fees versus users fees. To look at different business model, because the current business model definitely is costly. So as I stated yesterday to the committee, if they they opted to continue utilizing the existing business model, it's going to be an expensive business model. And it's going to be reflected in our budget coming forward for next year, because definitely we need to address the actual cost of doing business. We cannot sugarcoat it. And in addition to that, a lot of people keep calling me and say, well, why we have not laid off people. We used to get this service. Why are we not getting it now? My answer to them is because we never, during so many years have passed, somehow the inflation was not included in our budget as we move forward. So you cannot continue moving as a department without accounting for inflation. Cost of living goes up. But if we don't include that in our budget, it become a delta that we need to offset somehow, somewhere. So that delta over the years accumulated. And that's why prior staff were told cut services, or because they didn't have the funds. So the only way they could do it is, let's cut down recycling. Let's do this and that. So definitely, as we move forward with the budget coming up, we need you guys to be involved in telling us what you guys advising us to do when it comes to recycling, diverting, and what have you. So we can have the right amount, dollar figure included in the budget, so people understand the cost of business. That way, at least we could reflect what the people want, so they have the costs. In the meantime, we do need to figure out, definitely based on the analysis, based on the actual costs that my accounting department had created. It was based on, transporting, based on the current business, which is double, triple handling the waste, transporting it to the waste landfill, etc. So that we need to figure out. If that model continues, then we need to reflect the actual cost that to deliver this current model. So at least if people want what type of recycling want, what we need to meet and achieve, because things are going up in cost. So definitely that, I look forward to continue working with you guys on the commission on finding ways of setting up the different models. That was an assignment I sent to my former chief, but unfortunately it was not complete. So we need to pick up on that options. There was five options identified. So we need to tackle these options and get an idea as we go back and present it to the committee. At least they get some ideas of different business models. And at least we'll put it out for them and have them, come to conclusion what they like to do. Because we send in confusing messages out there. We want zero waste, but everybody went ballistic when we cut down the transfer station because of COVID related issues. Because they keep seeing people throwing more waste and more waste. Well, what is it? Is it we need to control waste and reduce it, or do we need to open transfer stations 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, just because people waste is getting more and more? So we cannot have it. So we need to find a happy medium that could be a win-win. Because definitely we need to create incentive. Currently, the transfer station, everybody could come in. You could come on with 10 pounds of waste, somebody else's could bring 100 members. No scales, no restrictions, no limitations. So it's like a, open, unended in and out type of facility. So there's no control, no accountabilities. So definitely we need to figure out, I look forward to your advisory committee to come up with advice for each of your districts, because definitely, as I stated yesterday, it takes a political will to move forward. And if we don't have any political will, then it's gonna get commingled and we're never gonna go in. Because it seems like it could be disconnect between different districts, what they want to provide their constituents. But I'm glad that I have a representative from each district within our commission. So you guys need to send a message to your council member of what we've been talking about, the reduce, reuse, recycle, reduction, allow, create incentive, hold people accountable for the waste they generate. And everybody have this misconception, well, we pay taxes. That's true, you pay taxes, but your taxes, if you really want to pay into what you produce, currently we charge about $114 a ton. EPA recommends that there's 4.5 tons of generation of waste per household. 4.5 tons at $114. We're looking at least over $500 a year. Right now, we only collect $40 per $1,000. So how is that paying taxes to the service that everybody's wanting? So we cannot, we cannot deliver the Rolls Royce of the service when we're collecting the price of motorcycle. So, we need to kind of put it and educate people, that's where the public education comes in. We need to really start putting money into it and start educating the public of the cost of our business and how much we get in from their so-called taxes. So definitely the idea is we need to set a fee. Either, I heard you guys before, pay as you throw, that's a good program. I mean, at least we need to recoup some of the costs to pay for the services that the constituents would like to see. So pretty much that's what covered, and our legal obligation, that was the last item that was in the presentation yesterday about what tying our hand is the current legal contracts we have. We cannot exit them. I mean, we got married to these contracts and we gonna seem like we're gonna be married to these contracts, and we just need to navigate through them and just swallow a sour pill and move forward with different strategies.
One of the things I recall you saying yesterday, Ramsey, was to pitch for getting a consultant who could develop the option of different business models that could be used to pay for the true cost of managing our waste. Did the commissioners have a view on whether or not we want to support that? Melissa, your hand's up. Do I let you?
Well, actually, remember, your commission sent a letter during the budget preparation requesting from the committee to include the third-party consultant to come in and do some analysis.
Right, that was initially set up for the water program,
Oh,
but
the
I
wastewater.
the same thing could be done on the solid waste side. It's looking at what are the real costs and how do we cover them? And there are different models that can be used, whether it's pay as you throw or an enterprise fund that charges fees that cover the cost of doing business. The free disposal that we provide now for our residents. So there are different ways. of laying out the costs. And one of the challenges, I think, I would agree with some of the comments made at the council. And I think specifically, Elise Robinson had asked this one is, we need some data. We need to know what are the costs for doing these different things. To do the cost of collecting and disposal of rubbish around the island with the system we've got today, the cost of doing recycling, and then the hidden costs that hopefully the life cycle assessment approach will tease out. Melissa, you want to say something? Go.
Yeah. Well, I want to say something, but I also have a question. And I guess it does speak to what you were just saying, Georgine, and what Elise, sorry, I have dogs here. I guess off the top of my head, and Ramsey, I don't know if you would be able to answer this, but it does have to do with data, you know, what is the cost of running a transfer station? And you know, what is the total cost of running all of our transfer stations? And I think one of the things we're up against, which Roy kind of spoke to a little bit earlier, is like a lot of people are bringing stuff to Roy because it's convenient. You know, he's in a conveniently located spot. They can just drop their stuff there rather than having to go to multiple places to dispose of their waste. And I think Ramsey, you had mentioned this at one point, you know, in most places, people have trash or recycling pickup once a week, right? That's how it works most places. And I think part of what we're up against right now is that people are used to being able to bring their trash to the transfer station whenever they want, right? So they're expecting, like you said, Ramsey, you know, for it to be open 7 days a week, 24/7. Well, there's a cost to that. And so I guess I wonder, I'm just going to kind of throw this out there. I guess, you know, in thinking about all of this and connecting the dots, you know, what I'm wondering is if we were to cut back on transfer station hours, you know, would that cost savings allow us to have something like trash pickup, you know, like so that we could do both, like we could allow for the transfer stations to be open, you know, a limited amount of time. So people who wanted to take their trash could still do that, but it wouldn't be 7 days a week. And then also have a more conventional kind of trash pickup system, which is what is in most places, you know, and that might cut back on, I don't know, like roadside garbage and all the litter that we see along the highways. And so I don't know, I'm sort of thinking out loud, but I would like the data too. I think that's an important piece of this. And, you know, like what is the cost of running these transfer stations? And is there a way, like I said, to limit the transfer station hours so that we could use that money in a better, more efficient way?
Right. I mean, the data was shared with the committee yesterday. So we have the costs for each transfer station. That's already been 90% determined. We need just to reorganize it and put it in more legible charts for everybody to see. But yes, the data we have, we shared it yesterday. So you can.
And it's in our reference folder. If you go to the meeting agenda, we have a reference folder, and that presentation with the tables that Ramsey presented is in there.
And Melissa, you bring in good points. Exactly. I mean, this is people convenience. They go and use Mr. K facility because of convenience. Well, convenience has a price attached to it. That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. You know, we cannot have transfer station at each corner, like I was saying this. We're not the Starbucks. At least Starbucks charge you for the coffee.
A lot.
A lot. And here, we cannot just because we get $40 and every $1,000 we get, it become entitlement if I need a station at each corner. I mean, we need to be realistic. Sometimes I'm bluntly speaking because I want to inject, you know, being transparent. Mm-hmm. Because I cannot sugarcoat it. Mm-hmm. You know, I have to speak what I see. So definitely we have a challenge, and we need to have, as I stated it yesterday, paradigm change. We need to start thinking about not only from a business point of view and also from a human behavior point of view. We need to change that behavior. People are gonna throw illegal dumping. They need to be held accountable. And the way we used to hold them accountable, at least in my prior business, we go through their garbage, we find their phone number, we find their address, we send them a citation of $1,000. They need to be held accountable because you cannot just destroy the island because people decided to behave. I don't want to say the word, just behave like, like non-human. You cannot just take your waste and throw it out in the public. I mean, we need to behave like a human.
Lee McIntosh, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had two questions about the presentation. I looked at it this morning. I guess the glaring one is I noticed that for the transfer stations, those that were open 7 days a week, they had a lower per ton cost than those that were opened, maybe 4 or 3 days a week. And looking at the totals, it looked like that was because those that were open longer or more often accepted more trash. And so you had more tons to offset the cost, or however you figure it out. So my question is, if the other transfer stations were open 7 days a week as the others, how would that affect the cost per ton? Would it significantly go down and be on par with the others, or would it stay the same? Is Waiohinu 3 days a week throwing the same trash away as if we were open 7 days a week?
Yeah, the tonnage, a good question, Lee. The tonnage, it seemed like if you don't have the human behavior change and the paradigm change about reduce, reuse, recycle, divert, you're gonna have the same tonnage. It's just people have a tendency to generate the same amount of waste that they do. If there's no public education, no motivation to divert, reduce, you're gonna have the same tonnage. And the reason the other facilities are cheaper, because you're right, it's the tonnage, because it's more centralized. The more centralized you have, the more users you have. The decentralized location, we pick them once every other day because we have a certain size of trailer. You have to be able to be financially efficient. You have to compact that trailer to the max. Otherwise, you cannot haul it half full or quarter because of the population. Like I said, you have to look at all these factors together to be able to come with the right niche or model, business model. But because currently we have so much separation between transfer station and communities, but yet in the same time, you have so much smaller distance between transfer station within 10 miles apart. So the question becomes, do we need that transfer station that it's only 10 miles apart from the Hilo reload center? So that's where the convenience comes in. So maybe eliminate some of the transfer station and come up with an idea of 40-mile radius that become our standard that people could drive, or 30 miles, 30 minutes drive, or, but zero drive. I mean, people just wanted to walk with their garbage bag it's not going to happen unless you have a collection system.
Okay, the second.
Oh, John, sorry, John wants to say something.
Yeah, do you have a breakdown on the differential between what your department receives from property taxes as opposed to other fees?
Yes, I mean, this was part of the budget. If you look at the budget that was submitted early this year, we get about 6% subsidy from the general fund to offset pretty much the residential use and the, the O&M. The tipping fees come from the commercial is almost half of our entire budget. Our total budget is 38 million. But, half of it comes from subsidies from general fund. And like I said, if you just run the numbers by currently we assume every house generate about 1.5 ton. So 1.5 ton based on even the current rate of 114, we're looking at $171. I can tell you that much. We're not collecting $171 from each property. We're collecting 6% of the general fund, which it comes to about probably $60 to $80 per house per year.
Right. Well, I mean, it just this is not news. It may not be news to you. It certainly isn't good news. But as we go forward, like here in Puna, we're only at about 40% of build out.
And here is, John, you bring a good point. I've been talking to the planning department, to the housing department. Things gonna change. We need to stop the bleeding somehow.
Mm-hmm.
To me, upcoming subdivisions, we need to start asking developers to start putting a drop-off areas such as the apartment complexes. Right now, if you live in an apartment, you have that trash service.
Right.
Why can't we ask developers to start doing the same thing into these new subdivisions?
Well, I mean, to give you a quick answer, some of the lots are 3 acres and more, because it is in it is on the books. It's supposed to be agricultural, which we know, of course, at this point it certainly is not the majority. But I mean, the thing is that we were going to have to figure out some other way of funding this other than simply at the property tax level.
I agree.
Yep.
That's why I look forward to you guys as advisory committee to start educating your own council members of what we talk about here, because it seems like there's disconnect.
Well, I mean, one of the things that I've been looking into is the idea that we get the disposal fee at the point of purchase. In other words, you get the money before it actually ends up in the trash.
John, I did a quick numbers, and currently, based on what we get, we charge, it costs us about 5 cents a pound. If we come up with legislation where at the point of purchase, you could charge consumers 15 cents a pound, you're talking about a dime a pound or 15 cents a pound. That should cover for our service. Because if people want to start producing, 100 pound of waste, but willing to pay for the pound of product that they purchase, I think somehow somebody would say you have to pay for the amount of waste you generate.
Mm-hmm.
Either you pay for it as you throw, or you pay for it at the counter when you buy 10 pounds of apple or whatever at $2.99 cents, add a dime to it for disposal.
Mm-hmm.
Or waste, because it's gonna end up, but you're right, John.
Makes sense.
Not continue depending on these 4 or 5% of tax money, and people think, golly, I pay taxes, I'm entitled to all the services that exist for solid waste. And that's misconception.
One of the things that I asked our new corporate counsel is to start digging into your concept of point of sale fee for disposal. He's not done, and I don't know, Sinclair, whether you want to talk about your initial impressions, but that's something that I think DEM is also interested in exploring. Can the county even do such a thing? Does it have to be a state fee? So it's a consideration, but Sinclair, you want to comment?
Yeah, I can just talk briefly about taxing and it. So the county, as we all know, gets its revenue from real property tax. The power to tax is reserved to the state. The counties can enact a regulatory fee or a user fee for certain types of services that they provide. Just kind of listening to what you guys are saying, I believe tentatively the county would have the power to charge for disposal of waste because that's a service that the person is being provided, and the county could charge a fee for that if the money is used to process and dispose of that waste. But tentatively, without looking into it further, taxing a product being purchased, that's the power of the state. And Ramsey, you know, me and Malia can look into that further, but I'm pretty solid on that.
Yeah, that's what I was told.
I got a question in Santa Clara. Is it possible, I know I asked that to finance and I think probably I haven't heard anything back from them. Could we put a fee on the tax bill rather than a tax? Could we attach like a user fee on the tax bill?
Sorry, a user fee on what bill?
The property tax bill.
So the county, I mean, we all know how this works, right? The county says, we need this amount of money. The administration, you guys would say, we need this amount of money to properly dispose of waste. And then you put that forward to the budget, and then council. So I mean, that's the regular process. The department says, we need this amount of money. And does the real property tax, does the revenue from the real property tax cover that? If it doesn't, then they'll have to raise the tax a little bit. So that's the process that funds your department. So that would be through the budget process. So that's how my understanding of how it works.
Yeah, I was wondering from a legal point of view, because I know in different states, they allow assessment fees to be tapped into the property tax bill, not as a tax, as a user. Because you go through a 218 process and it become, for collection purposes, it's easier to collect it within the property tax rather than trying to send the bill to 200,000 homes. So, but if from a legal point of view in Hawaii, I don't know. That's why I asked the question earlier. And even Diana Mellon Lacey, I think she was going to research it to see if we could assess a fee on the property tax bill for, the solid waste services or for wastewater services.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, but my understanding, I think Dana will look into that deeper for you, but real property tax, we just adjust it higher or lower depending on the needs of the county. So it'd be that would be the time during the budget process, the department say, I need this amount of money to properly dispose of the waste. And then it's the council either gives you that money or they don't. That's really what it comes down to. I think I heard you mention that earlier about political will and everything else, but
our goal, we're trying to not make it a tax because it's misleading, because you're right, it's a service. Service is not a tax. So, and I'm trying to make distinction on this by attaching a service fee on the same property tax bill.
Melissa, You had a question?
Yeah, I guess the issue I see with it being a tax is then it becomes kind of like an invisible cost, right? And people aren't associating the amount of trash that they're producing with having to pay for it. Whereas like with a pay as you throw program, people, pay for the amount of trash that they're producing, which then could potentially incentivize them in producing less trash. That's kind of the whole idea behind the pay as you throw program. So there's like a direct correlation between the amount of trash a person's producing and what they're having to pay for it. And I think that's a smarter way of doing, as opposed to having this kind of hidden cost attached to property tax. It just, I don't know. I think we're losing the potential incentive possibility.
Elise Robinson had a comment. You're muted.
Sorry about that. You probably say that all the time. Ramsey, I think that's really creative. I also think that I'm concerned that there would be pushback on the difference between someone who owns, a single home with 2 people living in it or 10. And obviously the household with more people will have usually more waste. So there would be almost like not a disincentive, but an unequal perspective on having a user fee based on the real property value. But you also did mention a second ago about putting this on the developers of new builds, new subdivision. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for us to stop the bleeding on continuing the same status quo, people taking their waste to transfer station, because eventually these transfer stations are going to be, they're not designed for expansion. Let's put it that way. So eventually now we're looking at redesigning 22 transfer stations to accommodate for growth. So the idea is to stop the bleeding, require the developer to designate a 20 by 20 area, 20 foot by 20 foot area where they put dumpsters, similar to what you see in apartment complex. And these dumpsters will be picked up by commercial haulers and be taken to the landfill. So that way, you as a new homeowner, you don't have to deal with your waste. All you have to do, carry it from your house to the designated area that's going to be designed for your use within that development. Similar in concept, this is what I call European model. And I mentioned it to our council member when I first started. I lived in Europe, and this is what they do. As you drive out of your development, your housing, they have multiple dumpsters, one green, one brown, one blue for recycling. So as you drive out your apartment or your housing complex, you just drop your bag into one of these dumpsters. And you have a commercial haulers, they come and pick it up.
I think that can certainly be one of the options. Did you have any other questions, Elise? I see Lee McIntosh has got his hand up. Go for it.
My second question was about, I noticed that for East Hawaii, that the trash is collected from the transfer stations and taken to a central facility, dumped, and then pushed into another container and then taken to the Kona. Is there a reason why they just can't go from the transfer station? Because you said they're full. Just take it straight to Kona and bypass the central facility in Hilo?
It is being done that way on the north side of the island, the west side and the south side. The Hilo is because of the distance and the routing. The department back then, they bought 5, we call them long haul trailers that could take 85 highway permitted loading, which is about 85,000 pounds. That way you can maximize for efficiency. You can compact more waste, so you'll have less trips. Definitely, you don't want 100 different trucks on the road, because the smaller the amount, the more trucks, more roads, more gasoline costs. So that was, I think that's the reason.
Elise, your hand's still up? Is that a new?
I do. I do have another question.
Okay.
It takes me a
Take your
minute.
question
Ramsey-
and then give a bathroom break. Go ahead.
Okay, quick question. So with the, I'm going to call them mini transfer stations and these new developments, who would be responsible for financially maintaining that? Is that like a leg of the county, or are you thinking that that would be a private entity?
That would be the home, as pretty much you create a home association for refuse. So each homeowner will pay like $20, $30 a month. That goes toward the disposal of the waste to the landfill. But once it comes to the landfill, because you get residential credit, we won't charge the commercial, the hauler.
So also these new developments would be required to have a homeowners association to develop one.
Yeah, if a developer, it's easy on a developer to create all that upfront before he subdivided and record the tract number. Because it's easier to deal with one person than dealing with 200 different. So if the developer from day one establish it and sets it that way, it's a slam dunk.
Okay, I've been requested to give a bathroom break. Why don't you take a quick one, 5 minutes, and we'll come back to talk about the recommendation letter from Rick Gaffney. If that's okay, we can move to 7B as a subject. Thank you. Go. Honor. Okay, we will resume. Just to wrap up, because we need to hear from Ramsey some more before the meeting ends, but how about I try to come up with some description of next steps around the solid waste funding and some recommendations. For example, we need some more breakdown of the true costs of managing our solid waste. And then we need to look at business options, or how do you fund the thing? Whether it's as an enterprise fund that's based on fees, or whether it's more of the same or some creative EPRs. I just try to lay out options, and then maybe distribute that, and then we can talk about it at next meeting. I don't think we're going to resolve how to manage solid waste on this island and the time we have remaining. Is that okay with everybody? I'll see what I can do. Moving on to 7A, we sent the message. Ramsey's here. I know he wants to be at our meetings and wishes we would hand him more answers. And so I'm fairly confident that we're going to have DEM representation. The written reports is still frustrating, and I will continue to press for coming up with at least a short update written report monthly for our meetings, and perhaps resign ourselves to, quarterly is when we're going to get the big long 20-page summary of activities. And since Ramsey's not here, I can say whatever I want to. But I think we've adequately communicated our concerns. So on to 7B, which is recommendation. Again, it was a letter that's in our reference folder for the meeting. And this was a paper presented, written by Rick Gaffney and Rick Bennett and blank on your third author. But I'll let Rick take over. I don't know whether you want to wait until Ramsey's here. Ramsey, are you there? Ah, there he is. Okay, good. So Rick, if you would like to talk about the proposal that you guys wrote up, and then we can see what the commission would like to do. Take it away.
Right. Thank you very much. This subject is the Kealakehe Wastewater Treatment Plant. And as you all know, that's been an ongoing subject of our discussion, going back as many years as most of us have been involved with the Environmental Management Commission. So basically what we've done is responded to the request for very specific recommendations to the DEM. And our purpose is basically to see the Kealakehe Wastewater Treatment Plant turned into a specific water resource recovery facility, which is essentially specifically a water recycling plant, as opposed to what it is now. And part of the reason for doing that is because that's what the original intention of the EPA was when the plant was built back in the 90s. And that aspect of the plant has never been fully realized. So that's the purpose of our letter. It basically, Rick Bennett did the heavy lifting on creating this letter. I want to give him full credit for that, and also recognize that although Rick is retired as the chair of the Environmental Management Commission, he's still extremely active in getting things done with the commission. And let me turn it over to Rick and ask him to further elaborate on the purpose for our letter and what we would hope to do today.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate the kind words and introduction. Greetings to the commissioners. I recall my days on the commission. We talked extensively about water reuse, and we're still talking about it. If you have my paper in front of you, I lay out some history. As Rick Gaffney said, it started in the 1990s. And the intent was to reclaim the water and use it on a golf course that did not exist. And when that golf course was never built, any notion of water reuse died with that dream. And to this day, water reuse for agronomic purposes is happening in the private sector, but it is not happening in the public sector. The airport, you could say, is public, but they do a nice job of reuse. The golf courses do a nice job of reuse. Down in Kealakehe, that golf course uses treated water very successfully. So it's not like we have to reinvent the wheel here. Agricultural irrigation is a science about which there is a tremendous amount of information and expertise, and it's my hope we make that expertise available. So in the interim years, what did we do with the water? The water went to basically a settling basin, 6/10 of a mile from the harbor, and that settling basin turned into a de facto injection well. As the water found a hole it could flow into constantly, and it's been doing that now for 25 years. the science is very, very clear. That water joins the groundwater on its inexorable path to the sea. And fortunately and unfortunately, depending upon your perspective, a lot of it emerges in Honokaha Harbor, where a lot of science has identified the constituents in that wastewater, expressly nitrogen and phosphorus, and the isotopic signatures of that nitrogen indicate has a human or animal waste source. Recently, our work showed a significant concentration of the artificial sweetener Splenda, known as sucralose, that's flowing into the harbor. We've measured it in the harbor, we've measured it at the wastewater treatment plant, and it is the source. So as we move into this era of water shortages, you read the news and community after community after community is saying, hey, we cannot afford to throw wastewater away. I'm sitting down here in South Kona where we're getting more rain than we've gotten in a decade, but the rest of the island is very dry. And the long range forecast is that dry trend is going to continue. And so it's in our interest to address our water resources holistically. Every gallon of reclaimed reused water that can be used for irrigation purposes displaces a gallon of water that has to be pumped from the deep water wells at Malka. It is a limited resource. It's expensive to pump, 1,500 feet. And so making our drinking water resource go farther is accomplished by reusing and reclaiming wastewater. Currently, the wastewater treatment plant operates under the authorities of the Department of Health, specifically Hawaii Administrative Rules 11-62, Chapter 25. And those are called water disposal plants. And in the statute, a water disposal plant must have a 100% backup system. When the DEM commissioned Brown and Cardwell to do a plant update for Kealakehe, it was done in the context of a water disposal plant. And so there was some option for reuse, but they also had to have the ability to dispose of 100% of that water should reuse not work. And the way it was being approached, I was assured it wasn't going to work because fully realizing reuse was not part of the plan. There was some language that kind of spoke to it, lip service, if you will. And so the $160 million price tag for the upgrade was basically to fulfill the letter of the law and make it a disposal plant that might do some reuse. But once you have spent the money on the wetlands treatment and the soil aquifer treatment ponds, which was yet another ground disposal system, it precludes any investment in agricultural irrigation. The decision to go that direction was made when I was on the commission, and it was not a decision that we were party to. So administratively, the decision to have it be a disposal plant was made, and the draft EIS was done accordingly. Now, if you read further in the Hawaii Administrative Rules, Chapter 27 specifically defines a water recycling system, or a water reuse system. 100% of the water is recycled through agronomic irrigation, and I'm going to come back to that. And there is no provision for any disposal if you're going to be a reuse plant. A feature that has to exist for any irrigation system, whether it's freshwater or reclaimed water, is storage capacity. You have to have storage capacity to buffer the very wet years and the very dry years. Storage capacity can be built on site and relatively inexpensively, and there are other facilities in the region where water can be stored. And I'll just let that be. But let's,
I want to make sure that we have time for the director's report. So if you can move it along, and basically what I'm thinking of is that we get to the point where there's a recommendation for motion to make specific recommendations to DEM.
okay, so in the Hawaii revised statutes, there is explicit language about an irrigation plan budgets, nutrient budgets, that has to be part.
I think Rick froze.
Rick, you froze. Rick
Yeah.
Bennett. I didn't do it.
It says my connection's unstable. Is that any better?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay, yeah, living in the country. And so there is no provision in the reuse chapter for land disposal of water, where you simply take some land, erect some big sprinklers, and you just dump water on the land. That would not be permitted under this chapter. It wouldn't be permitted under any chapter because of the impact on groundwater. So several things need to happen to fulfill this potential. We need a water reuse policy for the county-wide. And the plant needs to be redesigned and reauthorized to be a recycling or reuse plant. We have a salt problem in our reclaimed water. Saltwater intrusion is happening in the system, and the water has got too much chloride in it to be used on a wide variety of agronomic purposes. There are some salt tolerant grasses, but that often requires over irrigation to manage the salts. And so the recommendation is that resources be directed to plug the leaks. We need to get our reclaimed water chloride concentration down to what it is for our drinking water. And it is significant in the drinking water. So any additional salt intrusion closes that option. And then lastly, when the water becomes available, it has to become available in the context of irrigating an agronomic crop. There are best management practices that need to be part of the plan. Just building sprinkler fields and dumping water on them, as occurs now at places like Old Airport Recreation Area, it just isn't going to work. And then lastly, the legal liability that the continued use of the sump creates for the county is significant. Under the recent Supreme Court decision, that discharge is not allowed because there is no permit to discharge. And getting a permit for our impaired oceans would be fundamentally impossible. And so this recommendation is part of an overall set of ideas that we need to do a much better job of managing our water resources if we're going to have a sustainable future. And there's 1.8 million gallons of reclaimed water that can be made available very soon if we commit to a reuse policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett, Dr. Bennett. Rick Gaffney, are you prepared to offer a motion or two or three?
I am. I tried to put it in the chat, but I guess it was too big because the chat's not digesting it and distributing it to everybody else. So as Dr. Bennett pointed out, there are three things that we believe that need to be done. I would put this, the whole thing in the form of a motion, and then I'd be happy to explain each piece of that to the commissioners if that's what they desire. So the first piece is, or I would move that the County of Hawaii should adopt a water conservation and reuse policy that would specifically designate the Kealakehe Wastewater Treatment Plant as a water resource recovery facility and designate the plant as exclusively for the recycling of wastewater. Part two is the DEM should have the funding to resolve saltwater infiltration into the sewer system, and also needs an enforcement ordinance which enables DEM to inspect and require repair by owners of private laterals found to be leaking. And thirdly, that the distribution and reuse of water should use agronomic principles for best management practices. Do I have a second?
You're in a second.
Thank you,
Yeah,
John.
Also seconded it.
Any questions?
Melissa?
My only question is, I'm not familiar with agronomic principles. Could you just explain that a little bit?
Well, as Dr. Bennett pointed out, the use of the wastewater should be done based on the kinds of practices that our golf course managers and major agriculture users of wastewater, of which there are not a lot in Hawaii, but there are a lot elsewhere in the country, California in particular. So those principles are widely known in university systems. And it's simply a matter of the county reaching out and asking for the details necessary to be sure that this water is used to its optimum point of view, maximum benefit to whatever it's being used for. As I've discussed before, one option is to pipe some of this water to the ag park at Kealakehe, and the people in the ag park will have to know how to use it, and that breaks down into sprinkler size, misting type, flow rates, that sort of thing. Bottom line is that the science is solid because a lot of people are already using recycled water for other activities. There are people on the island who are very much aware of it because it's a big deal for all of the resorts that have their own recycling systems and golf courses that use that recycled water. So it's not rocket science, but the bottom line is we feel it's important to state it as part of the process so that water that we're creating does not get wasted.
Mm-hmm.
Elise, you have your hand up?
Yes, thank you. Rick, maybe I have two questions for you. Does the legislation piece need to happen before the project gets started, before the funding's there?
I'm not sure.
I guess can the project continue? Your first motion is to have a policy change in the county, but does that need to happen before the changes take place, or can it be dependent of each other? Okay, so maybe my second thought there might influence your answer. If I think the second piece about the funding from DEM, we should consider adding to that them seeking federal grants for this project from the EPA, Sustainable Water Infrastructure, so that there isn't an immediate stop, because that's a huge cost to their $38 million budget, which would probably put the brakes on things. So if there was funding there, does the legislation need to change first, or can it run independent of getting this done?
Well, what I've proposed is that they happen simultaneously, because it's a chicken and egg situation. One can't happen without the other. Certainly there's going to be an expense involved, but one of the amazing things about where we are right now in history is that there is about to be massive amounts of federal money available. And so I think it goes without saying, and certainly our council people and the mayor are already looking at that source. So we have a huge opportunity to accomplish this important environmental thing at a point when there is federal money available to do just this. So, and the bottom line also is that what we're creating is a system that pays for itself. I mean, we sell this water, we don't give it away. And there's demand for it, because if somebody is watering a golf course or a large playground area that's part of the housing area, then if they can get water for half what it costs, just off the top of my head, that it costs them for fresh water, they're going to take the recycled water because it's less expensive. So we're creating a system that pays for itself. And there are examples in Hawaii of those systems paying for themselves on Oahu. And Maui's in the process of solving the problem that they went to the Supreme Court for by creating a system of recycled water and a distribution system for that. So I don't see a reason not to request that the council move forward with something like this without talking about where the money is going to come from, because that's not really our kuleana, that's the council's kuleana. Did I answer your question? Okay.
Okay, Lee McIntosh has comment.
I had I was wondering about the second part. I talked about identifying, repairing the leaks where salt is coming in. But I thought the county was already working towards remedying that situation, that it was just going to take time to do that.
The county is working to remedy the situation in the sewer pipes that they own, but there's long been suspicion that the laterals that feed from private property, that would be hotels and larger developments that collect all of their water and then move that into the system, that some of those laterals may also be producing infiltration. And the county doesn't currently have the right to inspect those laterals. For the most part, they are privately owned and on private property. They don't have the right to inspect the laterals, and they don't have the right to charge those private property owners or force those private property owners to make the repairs so that that infiltration is effectively stopped. So that's why point 2 is included in here. It's to add to DEM's quiver of tools to stop this infiltration. And this kind of law is already on the books in Maui County and in the city and county of Honolulu, because it's an essential tool to stopping infiltration of salt water, which is a problem in any recycling system.
So I guess my next question would be, do you think it would be better to have, I guess, separate motions or proposals addressing each of what you propose and send them to the council? Or do you think an all encompassing one is better? You know, I'm not sure how the council, how it would affect the council if any, just not sure if they read a whole big thing of all the things that you're asking, that would discourage them from moving on it, or if they see 3 or 4 separate, that they might pick one and run with that, you know, if you could separate it.
I think it's kind of a package deal, and it's advice, which they can pick and choose on anyway. And it's more efficient to put them together, I think.
Yeah, I would agree, Lee. The putting them together makes sense for that reason, and also that when the council writes the legislation that we hope comes out of this recommendation, there'll be Corp Counsel looking over their shoulder and making sure what they're asking is legal. The ordinance is already available to our Corporation Counsel. The Corp Counsel has already been asked to look at the appropriate ordinance to allow laterals to be inspected and to require property owners to fix leaking laterals. So this goes through a big process before the council considers it, and I think it's better as a full package.
Melissa, did you have a comment? No. I would say I would support the 3 motions. I definitely support the idea of both as policy, but philosophically, we should be looking at not calling all our operations waste management. It should be resource management, and that looking at our water and the resources that we can extract from wastewater is our goal. It's the 0 waste goal. So I think this is an appropriate approach. I think it's going to be a lot of detail to work out and a lot of compromises, but I think that Rick's motion captures what we want to see, agronomic principles. I basically use life cycle thinking and do it the best way possible. So I think it meets the spirit of what we've been talking about.
You have a second.
Yeah, we had a second. So now it's time to vote unless there's more discussion.
All I can tell you is that the saltwater intrusion has been an issue since that plant opened. I was there on opening day, and I was told by the people who were running the plant that this problem exists. It's been there since day 1.
Okay, are we ready to take a vote?
Aye.
All in favor of
Can we
the
do a roll call, please?
3 statements? Excuse me? You want to do roll call? Okay, we'll do roll call and go by district. Elise Robinson is shaking her head and raising her hand. John Olson has already said aye. Melissa Cardwell?
Aye.
Lee McIntosh?
Aye.
Dee Fulton?
Aye.
And Rick Gaffney?
Aye.
And I say aye. So that's everybody. The motion passed. Thank you very much for bringing the issue to a conclusion for us. And we'll write up a letter to DEM and to the council to make those recommendations. So thank you very much, Ricks. Moving along, because it's getting late, to the oral director's report. Are you hiding behind your name, Ramsey? Ooh, there he is. Okay, 7C. I suppose we should have, but it's closed anyway. Get your opinion of that motion. You can think about it and come back to us if you wish. So dive in. Again, I think you know our frustration at getting something to review ahead of time. But let's just go with the oral presentation. And going by the outline, 7C, I1, Nahalehu and Pahala closure. Where are we? What are your next steps?
Well, as you all know, this is subject to litigation, so I technically would defer it to corporate counsel because we still negotiating with EPA, therefore I don't want to jeopardize any potential litigation issues as we move forward.
And we certainly don't want you to do that. I think what might be helpful, Sinclair, if you're on, is just, what are the process steps that we will be going through or are going through?
Process steps for what? Sorry.
Received a notice of violation. We are now in the steps of negotiation, and then there'll be this step, and then there'll be that step.
Yeah, so because I don't advise the department, I advise the board. I have no involvement in the notice of violation or anything else. But I can speak generally on litigation. So it's not full-blown litigation because it's not in court. But my understanding is the department signed an agreement, and there's I don't know what we would call it, a relook or renegotiation of the agreement. That's probably going to happen after the notice of violation. So yeah, it's going to be the department negotiating with the Environmental Protection Agency on the steps moving forward. And as Ramsey said, all of those communications are protected by attorney-client privilege. So Ramsey, the department, can consult with his attorney and decide on what they would want to publicly disclose. But generally, all of those strategies and what they're going to do and the discussions with the federal government would be covered by attorney-client privilege and wouldn't be open for public disclosure. Does that answer some of the questions or concerns?
All right, commissioners have other questions? I've done the NOV game in my past lives, so I know the steps you're going through. There may or may not be penalties. There may or may not be changes in the agreement. It's a negotiation. Lee, you have your hand up. Lee McIntosh.
Yeah, I guess I understand the attorney privileges and all that, but so when does, I guess it's just frustrating because we don't know what's happening or, what's going on. Like, when are we going to know what you're going to build or what you've chosen? Are we going to know after it's built or, where? I mean, it just seems like everything is just being pushed down the road and we're not really being told anything. Sometimes something is dropped out or the feds will say something, but it's kind of like we don't know what's happening and we're wondering when we'll know when it'll happen or when, not when, but what is happening. When can you tell us something?
Well, Lee, I could tell you that definitely something's going to happen. So, and you're going to know before we proceed with the design or the construction. So definitely, you guys, once the terms and the stipulated agreement is known. But yeah, you guys eventually would know, definitely not after it's constructed.
I just have a question to follow up on what Lee was asking. So what's the timeline for litigation? Like how much longer do you think the litigation process will go on?
Well, it's not like Santa Clara said, it's not actually in court to litigate. It's the potential of litigation. So right now it's, the negotiation, or you call it settlement or stipulation in the agreement as what we agree on. Maybe it's going to be stipulated in some kind of settlement agreement, or, I don't know the actual process, but definitely once that is determined, then I would imagine everything goes back to normal and you guys will know.
Do you know Ramsey, do you know the timeline for that? Like, I guess that's,
It's
is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it 2 years? Like, what's the general?
It's supposed to be ASAP because we're already behind the 8. So our goal is to try to get in as fast as we can to get concurrences so we can move forward. Yeah, our goal is because the final construction April 2023, so that's in 18 months.
Mhm.
So that would be a potential another NOV. So the idea is we're trying to figure out how the domino effect is going to play in the whole aspect of negotiating a stipulated agreement.
So my own impression and experience is it's months, not years.
Yes.
And hopefully just a few months, if not only 1 month. It depends on how close the parties are. But the potential for penalties is clicking every day. So there is incentive to get it resolved. And I'm sure DEM is working as hard as they can to deal with the wonderfulness of Region 9 and EPA.
You know it as well as I do.
So are we okay with that? I know it's a frustrating answer, but that's kind of where we're at. And I guess the EMC would encourage you, as soon as you know something you can release, get it to us so that we can further communicate it to our constituents. The next item, I think we've probably dealt with transfer station efficiency in our previous discussion. Like I said, I'll try to come up with it and work with you, Ramsey and Brenda, maybe to come up with some options for us, a little bit more concrete, that we can discuss at our next meeting. The number 3 on our list was the chloride readings. D, still on the line? I don't see her. Oh, there you are. It's like playing bingo. I gotta find where the numbers are. Would you want to ask your question?
Yes, I haven't seen any chloride data since last year. So I would like to be updated on chloride data, and I'd like it to be included in the report, the director's written report. This does tie in with the need to repair laterals.
So Ramsey, the question to you is, are you prepared to provide those kind of running reports on chlorides along Lee Drive?
Yeah, I guess Dee and I have been exchanging emails, and I'll Dora on vacation, as I told Dee to contact Dora and Eric. Dora on vacation. Eventually, you guys know we are short-staffed, so the sooner we fill these positions. I don't know if Eric had talked to you, Dee, but yeah, definitely. The sooner we fill the positions, you guys will continue asking for these information, and I know in the past it has been provided. I don't have a problem providing the data. But like I said, it's subject to the staffing and the testing. And so, yes, maybe D, continue working with Eric and Dora.
Go ahead.
And this is Dee. Ramsey, in the past, I was able to obtain that information from Alika DeMello, who was plant supervisor at the time. And it didn't seem to be a hardship at all for Alika to produce that data. You could just, if he is still in that role, and I don't know if he is, but if you could just simply authorize him, I can just stop by. And Alika, I think, was able to produce it, as I say, very easily. And I could stop by his office and just get it.
Yeah, Alika has been reassigned, as I mentioned in the email I sent you. He's assigned to collection, and probably part of his collection, he could continue doing that. David Thomas is the one that oversees the plant, but Alika's out on family medical leave, so you're not gonna be able to get a hold of him until he gets back. Until now, we don't know when he's gonna come back. It could be next week, or it could be the week after. So definitely, we do have staff challenges. When he gets back, make sure you can email him. My recommendation to you, continue working with Eric, because he's the supervisor of all the staff. That way, he'll try to help you out with that. Because he knows who's out and who's in, who's on medical leave, who's not.
I'm sorry, and Eric, who are we talking about?
Eric Takamara is our deputy chief.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Number 4 was Melissa Cardwell's question of describing the scope and length of the contract you have with Hawaiian Earth Recycling for green waste.
Yeah, so it was brought to my attention, I guess, that the contracts that we have, or that the county has with Hawaiian Earth Recycling for green waste, it's sort of a lengthy contract, and I wanted to find out exactly how long of a contract it is.
The contract is till 2036.
Yeah, that's long.
Yeah, so I think the person who asked me to bring this to the meeting she's on this call. I don't know if she wants to say anything about it. But I think the concern was that this contract, it wasn't brought to the public's attention or to the attention of the EMC, I think.
Melissa, this is one of the challenges I presented to the board, to the committee yesterday, is the legal obligation, as I was stating to you all earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The current, what we inherited from legal contractual obligation, HER and WMH is 2 contracts that were done way in the past. And it's hard to go back from a legal point of view to reshape that basket. But we are working, trying to do whatever we can legally to see if we can renegotiate these contracts.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I don't know what process they went through back when they signed these contracts. I mean, you're talking about contract was signing right after the Puna decision. It just kind of give you an idea. When WMH submitted proposal to operate the waste landfill and handle our garbage, I believe it was about $50 a ton. It kind of give you an idea. That's to handle the garbage, to process it, to bury it. Currently they still charging us the same amount without doing the operation of the processing. So, and now if you look at the cost of the transfer station per ton, almost at $200, $400, when initially that private entity told us they were doing it for $50-some.
Hmm.
Kind of put it in perspective how the cost over years has evolved. But
Mhm.
yeah, I cannot answer question based on what happened with the prior administration, what was going through their mind.
Mhm.
Hopefully, I said it earlier, we need to look at moving forward.
I see Elise has her hand up, but just want to ask one last thing in regards to this. Do you know when the contract was signed? Was it like 2016? So it was made it a 20-year contract or what?
I think it was extended in the prior administration for another 10 years. That's how it got kicked to 2036 in the prior administration.
Okay.
You okay? Elise?
Yeah, so in other words, they're not fulfilling their end of the contract.
The contract was signed for compost and they have not been delivering compost, yes.
Rick Gaffney?
So this is a legal question, and Ramsey, you may want to defer, but so effectively, going one step further from Elisa's question, they are in default, which technically could mean, or legally could mean, that the contract could be rescinded and restarted.
Unfortunately not, because prior administration had told them we don't have the organic material to do compost. So they gave them a waiver on it, at least till we get the organic material in place.
Did you have any follow-up, Elise?
Can you repeat that? The county gave away what now?
Well, because part of the compost, you need organic material to mix that has nitrogen that can create a composting effect when you mix it with carbon type of material such as mulch. The county did not provide that organic material to create the compost. But we are negotiating with them. They committed to do the compost. We have a monthly meeting, so we're looking forward for them coming around and start producing compost.
So this was on the previous idea of having a municipal industrial compost facility in Shipman?
Shipment is no longer exist. We crossed that one out. The idea is definitely at the West Cemetery landfill will probably have a place to do compost on the west side.
Oh, okay.
You know, it's perfect weather for outdoor composting, but maybe odor control. But yeah, I mean, we don't have the details. The west side, it could be on the east side, the Hilo area, possibly where the current reload facility is. So that's continuing. We're trying to understand the prior commitment in detail so we can shape it moving forward to what they need to deliver from contractual.
So if I may, I just want to let the other commissioners know, I've had this conversation with Ramsey before, but there are two major aquaculture businesses on the Big Island, and both of them have high nutrient fish processing waste. And we need to get this into the waste stream. It will allow us to produce a very high quality compost material. So please keep that in mind as we're moving forward. Both of the organizations have indicated a willingness to provide this waste product. They currently have to pay to throw it away. So we want to move it into the waste stream and benefit from the fact that we have literally tons of fish processing waste available.
And Rick, you're correct, and that was brought to their attention because that's where we're gonna give them the organic food to create the compost. In addition to the biosolids that come from waste treatment plant, private and public.
Any other questions on this topic? So then I would turn it over to you, Ramsey, if there are other informational items you'd like to pass on.
Not at this moment. Definitely, I recommend you guys watch the video and continue your advisory role on the possible funding mechanism. Definitely the options that we need to look at, and continue talking to your council member about reduce, reuse, recycle. Having transfer station open 7 days a week, it's not an incentive to reduce, reuse, recycle. It's actually incentives to throw more. So definitely come up with ideas about how we could potentially divert and come to smaller amount of tonnage going to the landfill and the transfer station.
And Peter Sir just posted in the chat that the video of yesterday's committee meeting isn't available yet, but he'll send it out to us so that we can, or some of you, I don't think I want to watch it again, but if you want to view it, it was definitely interesting, and there are a lot of opinions on the council's part as well. So I think there is opportunity for us to pitch in our ideas. Anything else?
I think that's it for me. Thank you so much.
I had that one other question about the staffing for the recycling program and the solid waste division, because there's two positions that are open. I think George, right, the division chief position, I believe, is open, and the recycling coordinator.
Melissa, thank you for the reminder.
Sure, sure.
That is great, a great segue. Please, if you know somebody, I just sent that email to our HR to start the recruitment process for George. And whoever qualified on the west side, east side, please keep an eye on it. Tell somebody that you know or yourself you qualify, apply for it. Definitely my take at it is we need to get the most qualified people. It's a challenging time. Yesterday in the meeting, some of the council member recommended, well, we could change it to ease the restriction of hiring, the role. To me, I objected to that because I cannot just get anybody. I need somebody that experienced in the solid waste business so it could help you guys and help me from a department point of view to set all these goals and objectives that everybody's been talking about. So if you guys know somebody out there, put the word out.
Okay.
Any other questions for Ramsey?
Thank you, Ramsey.
Thank you, Melissa.
Number 8, future agenda items. We'll be talking about solid waste funding options to come. I've also had a suggestion to talk about recycling photovoltaic cells, whatever they're called, and electric car batteries, and getting ready for that before it's piled up in front of us, trying to figure out what to deal with it. If there are other items that you would like to see on the agenda, let me know. Those of you in the public, if you have some items, probably the best way to do it is to go to your district commissioner, or you can send it to me and I'll see how I can work it into the agenda. And meanwhile, I'm gonna keep looking at the integrated solid waste management plan. Is DOH signed off on that thing yet? I don't think they have. They're as short-staffed as everybody else. Any rate, so if there are some specific items you'd like on the future agenda, that would be appreciated. Our next meeting is scheduled for October 27th. Again, we'll do it online. And we do have a request from council to avoid their meetings and double booking that day for a couple of months next year. So we might talk about how we want to schedule next year's calendar. And Peter, sir, and I'll work on that. Otherwise, I don't think I have any other announcements. Anybody else?
Georgine, I have a question. Our meetings, are they based on fourth Wednesday or last Wednesday?
Fourth Wednesday, I believe, is the tradition, but we could change it. Part of it is just having it as a steady day you put on your calendar. So if somebody has a suggestion, think about it. And like I said, I think the idea is not to overlap with a council meeting or one of the committees, the Water, Energy, Environmental Committee. But they shift their dates around sometimes. So we're not going to be able to avoid it altogether, but if we can.
Well, we've had really good engagement by council people, so I think it's important to try to avoid those conflicts as much as possible.
Yeah. So can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for bearing with us. Went a little longer than usual, but not too bad. And see you in October.
Thank you, everyone.
Is there a vote?
Oh, do we have to vote?
Oh,
All right, we need to vote to adjourn.
So moved.
Everybody say aye.
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 Hi.
Aloha. Have a good day.
bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.